ahead and transition though to the roll call and doing our attendance. And so what we're going to try to do, and please be gracious in me trying to manipulate this Teams call. It's the first one that we've held. And of course, as TAC members, we want to commend you all for prioritizing your schedule and joining us today. And we'll work through the technology end of this meeting format. But to begin, we want to just allow each person by roll call to share their video screen so that we can access your presence, and then just say here and notate yourself and the school name that you're representing. So to begin, Stephanie Beeson. Okay. Chanda Britt.
I'm here.
Thank you. Miles Johnson.
Good morning.
Bo Mullins.
I'm here.
Lainey Neal.
I'm here.
Thank you. Nora Ramsey.
I'm here.
Jolena Sizemore.
I'm here.
Thank you. Gareth Stroud. Carrie Walters. John Whipple.
Present.
Quentin Johnson.
I'm here.
Jennifer Howard.
Hello, I'm here.
Taylor Sullivan.
I'm here.
Abigail Nash.
Hello, I'm here.
All right.
Alan Hensley.
Hey, Stacy, can I break in real quick?
Yes.
We've got Commissioner Brown trying to get into the meeting. Can Paul or somebody resend another invite? Tony Tapman cannot get in either. So it looks like Tony got in.
I'm in.
Oh, good. Okay, we'll let you get back to.
Hey, Rob.
Yes.
It's Tony. Hey, I got it, but I just wanted to let you know the invitation was not sent out. So I don't know if there was other people with the link to the video that are having a hard time getting this, but it was not in the calendar. So just FYI.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Beverly Rutledge.
Here.
Tiffany Dunn.
Here.
Kim Saylor. Brianna Shelby. Angela Bevan.
I'm here.
All right, thank you. Okay, so with our attendance completed, Commissioner Brown is online now, and just want to give him just a minute or so to do a brief welcome. And Commissioner Brown, I'll turn it over to you. We'll go back a slide, Paul.
I want to thank all of you all for joining the call. I know you all probably have a lot of mixed emotions right now after seeing the news yesterday, and we were working with the governor's office. As you know, we've been making decisions. The governor's been making recommendations based on science, based on data since March about school closures and obviously other things that are being closed and had to be closed because of the COVID-19 crisis. And so we've been going along kind of 2 to 3 week increments, which I think was a very wise way to do it. Other states did not do it that way, but we were always holding out hope that there might be a chance that we could return to in-person classes, at least for maybe a week or so towards the end of May or June, particularly for senior activities and those types of things, and close out. But it's just not going to be able to happen. If you all, when you look at the CDC recommendations that are now being recommended by the White House, and you overlay those phases onto a calendar, you can just see that there's just not a way that we can even probably get through phase one of a reduction in the number of cases for 14 days to get us to through at least graduation season. So as a result, the governor, of course, announced yesterday a recommendation to close school to all in-person classes for the rest of the year. Of course, we've been saying that while buildings have been closed since March, school has still been open, and that's due to your all's hard work. And the reason I say you are coming with mixed emotion today is I know you're exhausted. I just want you to know that I've heard that loud and clear. I know students are exhausted. I know parents are exhausted. And I understand that. I just want to take you through a little bit of the thought process. Of course, what we are saying is that there will be no return to in-person classes this year, but we are going to require that all school districts reach 1,062 hours. That was the expectation of the General Assembly in Senate Bill 177, which was the COVID-19 relief measures the General Assembly passed related to education. However, the General Assembly said districts should take up and until June 12th to get to 1,062. And we developed a plan that we're calling the Education Continuation Plan that we released yesterday in conjunction with the governor's announcement. And what that does is I'm granting every district obviously now using NTI, all NTI days that were used and are going to be used in the 2019-20 school year will count for 7 instructional hours. Now that doesn't mean you have to, if you're currently doing a 6-hour day, that doesn't mean you have to increase the amount of NTI by another hour. What that means, that's a bookkeeping thing for KDE, and that will get districts closer to getting to 1,062. And so, for example, Jefferson County, because they just now this year started NTI because of COVID-19, they took about 10 days to get ready for that and get their teachers ready, which I think was a very wise thing to do. But because they didn't start NTI until April 7th, they were not going to be able to reach 1,062 until June 3rd, I believe. So with allowing NTI days to count for 7 hours, Jefferson County will be able to finish the last week of May, for example. I think Fayette County will be in a similar situation. The county that I'm in right now, for example, they were going to end in Garrett County on May 15th by being able to count 7 hours. And don't quote me on these dates because the superintendents are calculating these, but I think they're able to shave about 3 days off and maybe be able to have the last instructional day on May 12th. So what that does is it gets us everybody to 1,062, but it gets us out of and finished of instruction before June. And I know that's going to be a heavy lift still for those that still have the month of May to go. There's a school, I think Trigg County is reaching 1,062 as early as this week. And of course, that's just due to their schedule this year and how their days were scheduled and foregoing certain breaks. And then I think they started really early, so I think they're ending as early as April 24th. But with this plan that we put in place, every district will reach 1,062 by the end of May. That's much better than June 12th. And so we know that the remaining contract days for teachers will need to be spent planning professional development virtually, of course, but planning for next year because we know next year is going to look a lot different. Even if we show up in August full with buses full and our buildings are full and we don't have social distancing restrictions, we know that next year will be different because this year ended in such a different way. Students are going to have more needs than they've ever had before, and I know you all know that better than anyone. So that's a summary of where we are right now. And of course, the other piece that's hitting our students really hard is and the governor addressed this, is the inability to have in-person graduation ceremonies this year. It's just not going to be able to happen, and so we're going to need to move to virtual graduations. There you can do. The governor talked yesterday about schools can explore doing things such as a drive-in or drive-up graduation, much like you're seeing church services do, which is permissible, but of course you have to follow several rules. And then we heard from our Student Advisory Council last week that they would prefer, instead of those two options, they would rather defer graduation until later in the summer or early fall and have an in-person. And the problem with that is we just don't know where we'll be in those phases. And when you get into phase 2 of the CDC phases of reopening the economy, that, you know, even if you get into phase 2, you still have to have events with a lot of personal protective equipment and gloves and masks and all those things. It becomes a logistical issue. So while there's a possibility of being able to defer graduation to in-person, I would not want a district to miss out on doing some kind of virtual recognition during graduation season, just because when you get there at the end of the year or towards the late summer or fall, we still may not be able to do it. I want to just say thank you again. I know that it's difficult and hard at the same time. I was on KET last night in the KET forum. I couldn't be more proud of what you all are doing. Just looking on social media, hearing stories about what's going on. I use an example that we have a teacher that went to a student's house teaching the student using American Sign Language through a window. And then, of course, on the other end of the spectrum, we know you're providing instruction using some of the best technology platforms available. But we're doing everything in the middle of those two examples, and how hard that is on a daily basis. I heard from a friend who's a teacher yesterday and as you all know, virtual meeting after virtual meeting after PLC meeting after calling all of her students, just exhausted. On the other hand, we're reaching students, and we have a 93% student participation rate right now, which I would put up. I believe I was on a call with some other state chiefs, and I lose track of the days. I think it was yesterday, and we have the highest number that, from what I've heard. I mean, and you all know how you track the student participation, and that is consistent, 93%, with what we've seen with NTI over the last 10 years. We've tracked that, and it's always around 93 or 94%, even just on a normal snow day. To be able to keep reaching those kids when we're weeks into NTI at a 93% rate is amazing. And my hat is off to you and what you do every day. So thank you. I know there are still challenges ahead, and I'll be on the entire call to listen to what you have to say. And of course, we need to start, as hard as it is now to finish the year. We of course need to start thinking about what next year looks like and how we're going to deal with the needs of the students then. And of course, we're also encouraging districts to think about how you can continue to reach out to kids in enrichment activities or accelerated learning opportunities this summer by using summer feeding sites, and of course still though having to layer on the social distancing requirements. So it's a lot, but I know that we're all up for the challenge and we're already doing the work, and I believe we're doing it better than any state in the country, not because of the department or me or anybody else, but because of the teachers. And that's just as simple as that. So I'm glad to be here, and thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. We appreciate that information, and it's going to transition very nicely into our first topic on the agenda, which is NTI information. But before we do that, let's stop on slide 5, Paul, for the April 21st, 2020 agenda. We had submitted this about a week ago, so I know people have had access to the agenda, but we do need an official motion to approve the agenda with a second. And then TAC members, if you don't mind using the chat box, if you'll hover over the center of your screen, you're going to see a little dialog box that says show conversation. If you'll just click on that and maybe type in the word agree, that you agree with the contents of the agenda, that would probably be the best format for us. But I do need someone from TAC to make a motion to approve the agenda.
This is Nora Ramsey. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with flexibility.
Thank you so much, Nora. And a second?
This is Stephanie.
Second.
Okay. And from whom? Who was the second?
Jared Stroud. I'll second
Thank
it.
you. Thank you very much. Okay. And then in the chat box, if you all will just go ahead and document that you're in agreement with the agenda. And then also in that chat box, you'll see that Jenny has posted the link to the Google site for our TAC work site with the agenda and meeting notes if you need that.
Stacy,
Yes.
this is Nora Hainsey. It says only team members can chat. It won't let me. Ask team owner to make me a member.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to, Jenny, could I put that to you to see if you could?
I'll do my best.
Okay. All right. But what we could do at this point, if you can't type into the chat box, I'll just open up the floor. Does anybody have any disagreement with the contents of the agenda that they'd like to bring forward to the group? Okay. So if not, we'll go on to slide 6. And that will be the review of the minutes from the last meeting. That was January 22nd, 2020. And we'll need a motion to approve those agenda meeting minutes.
Nora Hainsey, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda, the minutes, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Nora. Made a motion to approve the minutes, and Stephanie Beeson, I think she made the second to approve.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, and I'll just give a moment. Anybody have any concerns with the agenda they'd like to bring forth? Or excuse me, from the minutes? Okay, all right, let's transition to slide 7. And we do have 3 segments of the agenda today. We've got 3 different presenters who are sharing information, and they're going to have about 10 minutes each. And just a reminder, if you are not talking, if you could mute your microphone to avoid that background noise, we'll turn it over to David Cook.
Thank you, Stacy. Good morning, everyone. I'm David Cook. I'm the Director of the Division of Innovation at the department. Most of you I don't think I know personally, probably maybe a few of you, but I'm very excited to be with you this morning to get your thoughts on some questions that I have and that I think are burning in many of your brains and hearts. As you know, and the commissioner mentioned, we've been doing NTI in Kentucky for 9 years. And before the COVID emergency, we had almost half of our districts participating in the program, 83 to be exact. And now, of course, all 172 are participating. So I just wanted to share with you about some of the information we're collecting already, but mostly to talk to you about what we're learning from this particularly challenging way of doing NTI, which, as you probably know, those of you who are in districts that already did NTI prior to COVID, it wasn't really designed for this. It was designed to be a more short-term program for when school is closed for snow or other health or safety reasons. So if you move to the next slide. Okay, there we go. So one of the things that we keep track of, as you can imagine, is how many days of NTI we do a year. And it's normally nowhere close to this number of days. If you think about 83 districts that have the option of 10 NTI days, that number is much smaller, obviously, than this. But since March 16th through last Friday, we have completed 3,429 days of NTI instruction across the state. That, as the commissioner often refers to, is an opportunity to reduce the learning loss that would be occurring if we had shut down schools completely. We know that there are obvious challenges to how much that would equate directly to a regular instruction day, but we at least believe that we're providing instruction to a level that will reduce learning loss for kids. And every week, based on the fact that all 172 districts are doing NTI, we're going to be getting an additional 860 days. As the commissioner pointed out, to date, based on the data that's being submitted by districts, we're at about 93% That number will probably fluctuate some, but we have found over the 9 years that NTI has been in place that our participation numbers mirror sort of the ADA numbers that districts report for attendance. So it's a correlation that has been strong all the way through the process of NTI. So we're happy that we're continuing that with the larger scale NTI situation that we're doing. And we found almost universally that districts who have provided a blended approach to NTI, that being digital and also paper, and using those in the right ways at the right times, has been the most effective approach. If you're all digital or all paper, you have some limitations, and this particularly with equity issues of access and so forth. But if you can figure out ways for the combination of those things to occur, that's the best way we've seen to go about it. So next slide. As we begin to look forward, one of the things that a phrase I've started to use, because I don't like the phrase new normal, because we're not going to just go back and transform and change everything about school, but we are going to face a different normal based on everything that's happening. And the commissioner already mentioned not knowing when things will open up, so there's going to be a lot of different things that we have to think about as we move forward, and the lessons that we can learn from this particular NTI experience and how that will affect moving forward how we think about remote learning and the continuation of learning when school has to be closed for whatever reason. We can learn a lot from this process that we've gone through. And yesterday I heard the commissioner say something that I like a lot, which is a lot of us were very thrown into NTI on March the 16th, and it wasn't what we wanted it to be then, but it's better than that today, and it will be even better the last day that you do NTI at the end of the school year. It's improving every day. The districts are improving how they're modifying their programs as needed, and you all as teachers are improving every day, thinking about the ways to reach your kids and to interact with your kids. Next slide. So there's two areas of lessons learned, obviously, in any situation where you're trying to learn lessons. One is the areas of opportunity, the other is the areas of challenge. So I'm going to read this. This is just a list that we've compiled with in my division, my team, and across the agency as well. You'll hear Commissioner and all of us at KD talk a lot about the continuous learning aspect of NTI and the continuation of learning. So this opportunity has helped us realize that all of our districts need to be better prepared should there be a reason for an extended school closure, or even think differently about what might happen on snow days, as many of our districts have done before. This has made us realize, and we're thinking through that, about how much of our support coming forward needs to be around professional learning, around remote learning, and helping more and more teachers become more comfortable, as they have been from March 16th until now, getting more comfortable with these kinds of ways of thinking about learning. The amazing thing to me always with NTI is how creative teachers become in this space, and particularly this time when there hasn't been the kind of layered topping of the state assessment. Teachers have all across the state have been sending us stuff about what they're doing and creating really new and different ways of approaching content, academic standards, social emotional things they're doing with their kids, just the whole thing. And attached to that, of course, is teachers are starting to see even more and different ways of doing both formative and summative assessment around these learning projects that they're giving kids, which are more authentic. In addition to simply having them take a quiz or a test, these ideas of evidence of learning based on something that you see in a video or a conference with a kid on the phone, you can get evidence of student learning, so forth. Next slide. those were the areas of opportunity that we see. These are the areas of concern that we are already talking about and what it looks like moving forward with NTI and any kind of remote learning conversation. The juggling roles of all of you all, both teachers, parents, everybody having to be all of those things all at once. I know many of you have children in public schools, and so you're having to deal with that as well. The lack of preparation, obviously, probably from one day to the next, you realized you weren't going back to your schools, and that lack of preparation that hopefully in the future we can address by much better preparation. Of course, the equity issue of connectivity and access for students. We're working on that. I think there's a lot of opportunity in the CARES money that's coming to districts to think about those issues. The connection to students, and when I say that different from connectivity, I'm talking about your ability to connect to your students because you obviously are not in the same room together. And we're hearing a lot from many teachers about what creative ways they've taken to both talk to kids on the phone, to do things in individual and small group sessions through Teams or Google Meets or Google Hangouts, things like that. And even to the point of some teachers, when they haven't been able to contact a student, taking a drive to their house and standing in the front yard while the kid stands on the porch or is inside the front door and having some conversation about what they've been learning. So there's been all kinds of things, but again, it's an area of concern that we want to address. Curriculum coverage, gaps for fall. We obviously know that you couldn't continue the full coverage of the curriculum during NTI. And we're all thinking about that. And then what does it mean on the other side not to have a state assessment and to focus on what we have to do with gaps there. Next slide. That's what I came to you with. I wanted to share with you the things that we're collecting about opportunities and concerns. And I know we're very limited in time, Stacy and Jenny, so I'd like to just hear if there's any comments or questions that you have for me or things that I can add to the list of opportunities or concerns.
I'd like to say something if I could. This is Miles from Jessamine County. I'm an art teacher. I've had faith for years in NTI. I think we've really tested the system. I'm also a parent of 20-year-old twin daughters in college that obviously had to leave EKU, and they've adjusted well. My team at school has gotten a good program in for students to submit work. And I think down the road, I have a lot of confidence that after this and then throughout the summer that we will be even better prepared for whatever comes up in the future. But I have a lot of faith in that things will be on a good path.
Thank you, Miles.
Okay. Anybody else want to share? And if you'd like, if you have some questions that emerge after our meeting today, you can send those, of course, directly to David Cook, or you can send them to me, and then I can forward to the appropriate person. But thank you, David, for sharing with us. Now we're going to transition.
I would just like to say that, David, thank you for presenting that, but you're giving me credit for your own quotes. I think the quotes you credited me for, I actually took that language from you.
I'm just being a good soldier there, Commissioner Brown. I always want to give you the good credit for publicly saying stuff that I might have said to you. So.
Okay, well, we'll transition to item 4 here, graduation requirements, and we have Amanda Ellis with us today to share some information around that.
Good morning, everybody. So good to see some faces and see so many of you show up. I know you're extremely busy, and I really echo what Commissioner Brown says. And David, we really are grateful. My husband's a teacher, and my daughter's a sophomore in high school, and I have a freshman in college. So we are learning this from all aspects, and definitely know how busy you are. So thank you. I just want to give you a really brief update. Commissioner Brown's already referred to it with the changes you guys are finding out and graduation ceremony. So what are we doing about grad requirements? We took in lots and lots of feedback, started with students, and really have heard from many of your districts and many of you even just about what to do. So the class of 2020 is very heavy on my mind because they've had to endure the most change and sacrifice the most traditional celebratory things that go on, especially at the end of the year. And I do hurt for them and know that they are much more resilient probably than I would be and just taking it as it goes. So what we've tried to do is be very flexible and work with districts to do what's absolutely best for students. And so part of that is to remove any unnecessary barriers that kids have no control over, or schools or teachers have no control over as far as requirements. So just briefly, Paul, if you'll go to the next slide, what we offered to folks just as a talking point and a way to get started, actually you can go to the next one, is that currently in regulation, especially for this year's seniors, we have a minimum graduation requirement. So the next slide will show you this one, option 1, that what the state requires is the minimum 22 credits, which are 4 credits in English language arts. As many of you who are in high school know, English 1, 2, 3, and 4, 3 credits in mathematics, algebra 1, algebra 2, and geometry, with a 4th math course that was considered an elective that's required for this year's seniors, 3 science courses, 3 social studies, which is up to the discretion of the district as long as it covers standards, a half a credit in health, a half a credit in physical education, 1 credit in visual performing arts, and then 7 elective credits. And so most all districts, if not all, require additional things. So many of your districts require maybe 28 credits with community service, or that they must be transition ready, or that they must have a credential. Whatever your local board and SBDM set as the requirements, the minimum that has to be required at the state are these 22 credits. And like I said, this is the basement, and then your districts have built on top of that. So one of the things that we've posed to the districts as considerations, because it is a local decision, is to consider waiving any of those additional requirements that cannot be attained because students are not present in a school or may not have access. A big piece of this consideration that we've really pushed in our guidance is around equity of access to resources and even to connectivity or to computers. And so many of your districts and you have probably made multiple phone calls and multiple connections with families, which we are forever grateful because you're putting kids first. And so what we wanted to do is make sure that our requirements, or that even local requirements, are not causing a barrier due just to equitable access for students. So this was the first option we put out as a point of discussion. And then Paul, if you'll hit the next one, please. Option 2 would still give a minimum, but what it would require is for the Kentucky Board of Education to waive their requirements in regulation. And basically what it would be doing is requiring all of the core classes, but removing that requirement for electives. Now, most of our districts have said, you know, by March and April, we're already having senior talks with our kids. We're doing senior checks. We're making sure that everyone's on track. And if they're not, we're really putting a heavy emphasis. So the guidance we provided were what that's in the guidance we have actually currently posted for graduates of 2020 is to absolutely put your students' needs first. And if we and when we discussed this with the Kentucky Board of Education last week or the week before, I've kind of lost track of my days. They were very open, didn't have a strong opinion on it, but basically if the district felt like that they needed to be waived, have the waiver to only require the 15 core courses and not even count the electives electives that they could apply to the Kentucky Board of Education for a waiver for this minimum, below the minimum, the 15 credit hours. I can tell you we've had 2 district inquiries, but no one, to my knowledge, has filled out any waiver at this point. We're monitoring that just in case we need to have any kind of a special call board meeting. But basically, those were the 2 options. When we did ask principals and students and teachers and our task force, there was really kind of a 50-50, like, just let us decide locally what we need to do and see where we stand. Most are good with the 22 credits if they feel like they need it. A couple of districts have looked into the 15 credit hour, but they just feel like that was not as helpful because really they're already there. The other piece that we also did receive waiver from, thanks for the help of Commissioner Brown and Lieutenant Governor Coleman, as she's also our Secretary of Education Workforce Cabinet, they did waive the requirement for the civics test. So many of you know that this year's graduates would be the first class. Oh, thank you. I couldn't remember if I had that slide in there. That this would be the first class that would require all seniors to have completed and passed with a 60% pass rate the civics exam. Now that is administered and the logistics around that is all at the local level. And so we did have some students who had not completed this and did not have access to technology or connectivity. So that would be a barrier that was out of their control. So we did waive that requirement for this year's seniors. So they did not have to worry about that at this point. Most had completed, but those who had not and did not have access, we did not feel like was fair to prohibit them from graduating because of this barrier. So I'm going to stop there and ask first if there are any questions or concerns around that. And then there's a couple additional things really briefly, Stacy. I know we're on a tight timeline that I do want to share with the teachers on this call. So I'll pause and see if there are any questions. Okay, well, if there are and you think of anything later, please feel free to reach out to me. Amanda Ellis, I'm on Global, and I believe my name and information was on here. The guiding question we did have around this was if we needed to improve any additional ways to communicate these requirements and graduation. As Kevin said earlier, you know, the big concern is about how do we celebrate these seniors appropriately and safely, but still make it personal for them. And so that's something that is very much on the forefront of our minds. Obviously, we don't determine that at KDE, but we are certainly open for ideas. And ways that we can help communicate for you all, different ways that we can celebrate the seniors that still make it feel personal, but ultimately their safety, your safety, and the safety of our community is absolutely priority. And so it just makes it tough, but we are very open to ideas and helping to stir those creative minds, definitely. So I'll pause there on graduation and anything else my colleagues would like to share that maybe I've forgotten.
I would just say, Amanda, that if we need evidence that teachers are exhausted, the fact that we don't have many comments at all on today's call, because I know from previous teacher advisories that's not the case.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing that in action.
Good. Yeah. And you know, I completely agree with you. I mean, I live with it at home, and I think my husband spends as much time on the phone with families and kids. He teaches high school as he does planning his lessons. It's about 50-50, and it's at all hours for whatever works best for students and their families, and accommodating that. Many of his students have taken on jobs at Kroger, at our local Kroger, to fill in for the jobs needed to fill orders. And so, you know, it's very real, and it's a very real struggle, and it's a very, very much a sacrifice of your time and what you're doing. And so please know, I hope you do know, we know you're tired, and we feel it, and most of us live it too. So you're right, Kevin. I think that's a good observation. The 2 things I do want to share briefly, and Stacy, I promise I won't be long. But there are 2 webcasts that are coming out, and I know you're webcast tired. I know you are, but these are specifically for teachers. So one of them, as Kevin mentioned earlier, I think either it was today or on another webcast, we have many of these, is that we are going to host a webcast next week. We're confirming the date with our media folks today, with teachers giving examples of how they are making NTI work. There are many, many districts who are new to this and are overwhelmed. And David mentioned a little bit about that, David Cook. And so we are working together to identify some teachers at different levels to share maybe what they struggle with at first and some solutions that they have found to work for them. I think that'll be helpful for you all, and to hear from other colleagues across the state at different levels, elementary, middle, and high. So we'll be posting that very soon as we confirm a time. It'll be next week. That's our goal, is to be very timely. The other one is on April 29th. It just came out in the Monday message, and Stacy, I will get that information to you. We'll have it in any possible publication. Is that our standards team have worked together to come up with some resources and to start building a series of how you all can start to think about addressing the gaps as we finish out this year and begin to think about next year. And really the time that you have once your students are out, and if you still have some contract days or however you work with your administration on it, we have guidance and support and resources to help you to start thinking through those gaps, using the progressions and how you really strategically plan for students coming in at different deficits and things that they're going to need additional support. There are only so many of you and so many hours in the day. And so we're really trying to help teachers start thinking strategically about how to approach that next year. Clearly, not every kid can be an RTI, nor would that be necessary. So core instruction is going to be so pivotal next year. And if we have ever talked about the importance of personalized learning, this is like personalized learning on steroids. I mean, we're really going to have to be as prepared as possible. And so we want to support you in that. We want to support teachers in that planning process, and really give you the resources at your fingertips. So you're not digging and thinking, what am I going to do? We're really sensitive to that. I can tell you my standards team are all teachers. Every one of them are teachers and instructional coaches. And I just have the pleasure of working with the superhero team. So that will be pushed out. It's already started today, but I'll make sure you all personally have that link and that information to please share with your colleagues. So I will stop there. Stacy, I know you're on a tight timeline, and is there anything else you need from me? Please reach out and I will turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that valuable information, Amanda. There was one slide, if you transition to the next one, Paul, that mentions a survey. Did you want them to engage in a survey, Amanda?
No, at this point, we had, I apologize for that slide being in there. I forgot that was there. No, that's what we actually did with our students and with the task force. And that's how we came up with this compromise and next steps. And actually our whole guidance was built off of that based on the feedback from the field. So
okay.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Stacy.
No problem at all. All right, so we'll transition then to item 5 on our agenda, and this is in regard to delaying Impact Kentucky survey results. At our last meeting in January, we spent a lot of the meeting time discussing the Impact Kentucky survey results, and so today with us we have Rob Akers, and I think also Meredith Brewer is going to be sharing some information around this topic of delaying those survey results. So I'll turn it over to Rob.
Hey, good morning, everybody. It's good to be with you. And just to echo what the Commissioner and what David and Amanda have said, we couldn't be more grateful for your service, for your fortitude, for your creativity, everything that you've done to try to meet the needs of kids, while at the same time trying to meet the needs of your own families, your own children. We were talking about, April and May is usually kind of a grind anyway, but man, this is exponential for what teachers are going through, because at least you could go to work and then you could come home, but trying to manage all of it at the same time from remote is just a heroic effort. So thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. Last time we met, we talked about our Impact Kentucky survey, and Paul, if we could go to the next slide, show a little of the of what we got from it. We're really excited that even though this was not a required survey this year, we still had 43,000 educators provide feedback, which is really big. And it was around the following constructs that are on the screen there, around professional learning, feedback and coaching, school leadership, staff leadership, relationships, resources, student behavior, educating all students, and climate. And the survey was more targeted this year, and hopefully you found that it was a little more user-friendly, a little quicker to get through, and we are excited that we've got data to be able to share. Can we go to the next slide, please? Just a quick look at what a dashboard will show you from the survey. You can see that it gives you that quick dashboard. It shows you percentages, and it also shows you in most of the constructs how your school or your district or your state compared nationally. Panorama, who is our vendor, is in several hundred school districts, and as a result, they're able to provide tracking on their questions, and they're able to norm them and show you how Kentucky fared on that. One of the things that you'll find is a little different is that the results are shown as percent favorable. It's a little different than agree or disagree. And there was, as you can see, there is a middle selection. So you may find some of the results may trend toward the middle a little bit, whereas with TEL, you only had 4 choices and you had to fall on one side of either on the strongly agree or strongly disagree side a little bit more than you did in this survey. With it, I think you'll find the data is a little more actionable than what we had in TEL. The one area that we won't be able to coordinate or to look at comparatively nationally is around the student behavior, because we took those questions straight from TEL and we imported them into Panorama's platform for that. So with all that, we really want to get this information to you, and we had plans in place to have them to you by March 23rd with meetings that were going to occur to kind of close the feedback loop with our steering committee. We've already been in front of the local superintendent's advisory committee. They gave us guidance on wanting to see these before they went out so they could prepare for the results. We had everything set in place, and then COVID hit, and then we just decided as a leadership team that teachers and districts really needed to focus on the specific basic needs of their kids first before getting into this. So what we need to do, and we know that the chat feature is not working, so we're probably just going to have you unmute here in a minute and have you jump in, because we are going to really need feedback on this. And these are our kind of our guiding questions for impact release. The first one is all around the date. When do you think it would be appropriate to share this data? Do we think we should stage it on the way out in terms of going on and giving kind of the 50,000-foot view of state level data first, and then letting people kind of digest that a little bit before we go to the district level data? And then we need to know from your perspective, does delaying the data cause some problems around any CSIP work or professional learning that you think is important to your school? So let's go to the first question and just have you kind of kick around when you think a good time to release the data to be.
This is Nora Rainsy. As a member of the site-based and the CSIP, so kind of answering all these in one. And with the end of the school year being like it is, where we have assistants and teachers going to have days that we need to make up hours, I don't know about a date for Publicker, but I think that we need our school and district data in our hands to plan for PD, or just to go through while we have this time. We already have leadership thinking about what can we do on these days, and we don't want to be doing anything meaningless. This could be something really effective that we can be working on and helping us plan. We haven't finished putting all of our PD in place, and we can use this information and maybe focus on an area that we need to improve on. As far as going publicly, maybe that's not something we want to push out immediately with so many other things going on, but if there's a way to get it to schools first, I think the schools and districts could appreciate and use this information now. As a teacher that helps plan a lot of PD and CSIP every year, it could definitely be beneficial.
Thank you. Any other thoughts around that? I met with a group of superintendents last week, and their feedback was, we've got so much on our plates right now. We don't want to potentially throw anything negative, because clearly not every school got all gold stars on the survey results. Do you think that's an issue in terms of throwing one extra thing on teachers, or throwing negativity out there that would be distracting?
Hi, this is Angie Bevan. I'm actually new to the council, but I agree with Nora. I know, well, to answer your question, I feel like there's always going to be a little bit of negativity, but having those, I know my district already has like 5 days set in place for teacher days, and this would be really beneficial to have. And, you know, with school being out, I don't feel like it's really adding more work to the teachers or principal, because that would be what we would be working on those days.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this is John Whipple in Breck County. And I think that, well, it would really be good for releasing the data, would give us a lot to do during the time that we have to make up after NTI is over. However, I also want to point out that the data was taken back in the old world before NTI, and that when we come back, we don't even know what the schools, you know, like they said earlier, we're not going to have the new normal or go back to the old normal. So we have all this data that refers back to like the old way things were. How are we going to use it to apply to the post-COVID world? That's my question. Or will it make a difference?
Well, I do think that some of the constructs, regardless of COVID, are important to know, especially around staff and leadership relationships and coaching and feedback. I think especially around coaching and feedback, I think about with all the new teachers who are going to be entering the workforce and teachers who are re-entering after maybe being out 6 months or so. There's going to need to be a lot of coaching and feedback provided, because you may be looking at things in a completely different manner. So I think that's an excellent question. What about so what I'm hearing, at least so far from 3, is you think we should go on and release school and district data sooner than later, and not necessarily a tiered approach to that. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yes, I'm in Jefferson County, and we've already started talking about like PD and different things we'll be doing. So I agree with what they were saying, that I think it would be helpful to have now for planning purposes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think it also, this is Stephanie Beeson from Warren County. I think if we give districts and schools the data, then school leaders then have the autonomy to either use that data now or to focus on other aspects of professional development, such as how are we going to meet our students' needs when we come back. They will then have the option to do one or the other or both, and really maybe be able to meet the needs of their staff a little bit better if they are given that option now.
Okay, thank you.
Nora Ramsey, one more time, and maybe just set some guidelines with, we are sending this just to schools, and we are encouraging you to use this as goal setting. Choose one area. Don't focus on the whole thing, but while you're planning with your teachers, choose one area of improvement, because I was actually the administrator of this test, and I was hearing feedback as people were coming to get their paper and stuff, and it was a different time, but at the same time, we are keeping most of the staff. We aren't getting new staff. I think that's a trend in Western Kentucky. We actually might have to lose a teacher, but the people that filled out this survey is who's going to be working next year. And although it might look a little bit differently, they felt pretty strongly, either positively or negatively, about their answers, and we can use that moving forward. And if we just encourage them to focus on one area, don't digest all of this, but pull out something that we can work on and be better for the next year. And that's why we're going ahead and giving it to the schools, because we want to use this data now if we can. And if you want to, and I love the idea of, if they don't want to use it now, that's okay. But I know my principal can't wait to get her hands on it. And she's one of those that if it has 1 point lower than she thinks it should be, then she's like, oh gosh, what can we do? But and there may be some principals who don't want to have it, but if they do and they can use it, then why not get it out there?
All right, thank you.
Hi, this is Chanda Britt from KSD. I can see everyone's perspective. I think what I'm thinking right now is so many teachers and administrators are just almost at the breaking point with the stress. And I know we're going to have plenty to do during those last days when the students are done. I don't know that it would get the attention that it deserves at that point. And also, I can just see people feeling like, is this really what's important at this moment?
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. Any other thoughts on that?
Hey, this is Garrett Stroud from Hopkins County. Our school district voted last night to end the days for students on May the 8th. But meanwhile, teachers are still working until May 18th, I believe. So we're going to have almost a week where we're looking for things to do in terms of professional development. So I just want to echo the comments made by so many others. I think that releasing it sooner could actually be really beneficial for as we think about transitioning back in the fall.
Okay, thank you. So I guess in the interest of time, we'll say anything for the good of the order on this. I think we've got some good feedback on this, and certainly we'll be reflecting on it with the leadership team. I really appreciate your input.
Okay, thank you, Rob. All right, let's transition to the next slide. It's item 6. We do have just a minute or so here for any kind of general questions, additional feedback from the advisory group members. If anybody has specific question they'd like to ask, we may not be able to answer it at this point, but we could certainly follow up with some written correspondence, any kind of topics of interest. Just open that up to the group. Okay, well, I also need to bring this to the TAC members. We have a conflict, a scheduling conflict for our July the 15th, 2020 meeting. That date is not going to work, so wanted to make the proposal of changing the 15th to July the 14th. So just a one-day change there. But I do need a motion from someone in the group to accept the change in the date from July 15th to July 14th.
Beverly Rutledge, I will make a motion.
Thank you, Beverly. And a second?
I second the motion.
Okay, and who was that?
Brianna Shelby, Jefferson County.
Thank you very much. Okay, and just opening up the floor, anybody opposed? We're all in consensus? Okay, thank you very much. And I will keep you updated about the format for that meeting, if it will be virtual, or if things change by some possibility. We're together, but I will keep you informed of that. So also on slide 24, as we transition, we have some proposed dates, and these are things that are just possibilities right now in terms of dates, locations. That's pretty much what we were relying on. So these are tentative. Just going to throw them out there as proposed, not yet confirmed, but maybe just go ahead and pencil those in, and then I will be following up with correspondence when these dates become finalized. So right now, just proposed dates. And then that takes us to the last item on the agenda, and that is our adjournment. And as it is 11:01, we'll just take a motion from someone in the group to adjourn.
This is Nora Rainzy. I'll make an motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Nora. And a second?
Stephanie Beeson, I'll second.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right. Well, just want to extend my appreciation to you all for being so patient, especially with this platform, and of course, for prioritizing your schedule to be with us today. If you need anything at all, feel free to reach out. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you for spending time with us.
Thanks to all of
Appreciate
you
it.
for what you're doing. Take care. Hang in there.
Yeah, take care, guys.